Hello and welcome. He is a household name in Cameroon. Remembered and acclaimed as one of the most prominent pioneer journalists of Cameroon television, CTV. News presenter, host of Tam Tam Weekend, he also conceptualized and presented the very famous news program, The World This Week. However, just at the top of his career, he took a decision that left many questioning. 23 years afterwards, I met with this distinguished gentleman for an incredible journey down memory lane in search of answers to the many questions that led to his rise to fame and him quitting CRTV. You're welcome to the show, Mr. Julius WARMEY.
Thank you very much, Nene.
Yes, I know a lot of people go like, he is the one. How do you feel like when you go back home and you see the faces of people lit up when they see you and they go like, that's him?
Well, yeah, increasingly fewer, I guess, because it's been a long time. It's 23 years, as you say, and a lot of the younger people don't remember who I am, but many of the older ones still remember. And it's easy for them to remember because back in the day there was just one television CRTV, so it was easy to get famous.
All right. You are one of the pioneer journalists of CTV. Your love for television, your love for journalism started way long before you even got into the Advanced School of Mass Communication. In fact, you told me that when you were still in Form 5, you had to make contributions for the radio. Yeah,
I mean, I left secondary school actually before Form 5. I left in Form 3. I never went back. I did my O-levels at home. I don't know, for some reason, it wasn't like, as a lot of people would have, the issue of school fees and stuff like that. I just kind of left school and didn't go back. But I was a prodigious reader, and I loved to read and I loved the news a lot. Having grown up in a household where my father, who was a school teacher, loved to listen to the news, and so I kind of picked it up from childhood. And so by the time I wrote my O-levels and was in Yaoundé and hanging around with some of my friends who were already working in the radio, they realized that I was very much, abreast with current events. And they invited me to take part in some of the news programs, especially Cameroon Calling, which is the real program that got me into the radio.
Tell me a little bit about your early days or your early years in the Advanced School of Mass Communication. How was training done then? Who were your classmates to start with?
A lot of my classmates, I think quite a few of them are still practicing in Cameroon, but many of them left. Some actually retired, I think. But I think I'm looking at that entrance list. Well, it's been 30 years now. There's my very good friend Willini Ba, Emmanuel Tato, Cameroon Tribune, Mike Unzer, Ben Bekan Jovens, and on the Francophone part we had my friend Abednego Mesang, who unfortunately died. We had Leopold André Meboué, Jean-Claude Asali, and the Anglophones, of course, again, Peter Ifande, Gomba Ifande. God,
all right, let's let go of it. You tried. How was training done then?
Training, we had basically a different program not a different program, but actually there was a difference in the training because a lot of our teachers were Anglophones.
Wow.
So we had training mostly in English. And I think, it's something that's probably changed today.
It has.
Yeah, but back then, most of our subjects were in English, and we were trained by people who had trained abroad and also practiced in Cameroon. So it was mostly in English, yeah.
Now, you completing the Advanced School of Mass Communication in 1985 coincided with the launching of Cameroon television during the Bamenda Congress, CPDM Congress. And for the first time, people could watch television in Cameroon made by Cameroonians. Right. It was some kind of an incredible experience. I remember fully well. Now, you were actually, I think that this was some kind of an extraordinary experience for you because you were all caught in the whole commotion. Yes. Yeah. So recount to me this first experience of yours.
Yeah, it was really amazing. We had just, well, those of my class who had just returned from training abroad in France and Canada, and finished writing. So we had kind of the latest experience of television, having just been abroad working on television programs and stuff like that. So this for us was a chance to show what we're good at. But like everything else at the time, I mean, it was it wasn't dependent on whether you could do the job as to I mean, it was so selective.
Wow.
It was such a privilege to be working on TV, but there weren't that many of us, so they just had to take us. I'm trying to be kind of polite about this, but there was a tendency to pick people, not for their competence, but for who they are, who they were, or whom they were related to. Yeah, but they found out that very quickly on TV it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. You can't fake it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we came aboard very quickly, and it was really an incredible experience for us and for Cameroonians as well, just to be able to watch TV. And I still wonder, because I don't think there were quite a few TV sets already, because I think for the previous 3, 4, 5 years people were watching videos on TV, so they had TV sets. But
television made by Cameroonians.
Yeah, that was different.
Yes, it was different.
Yeah.
Now tell me a little bit about the whole environment, the atmosphere, that place, the Bamenda Congress Hall. You understand, when we're doing live broadcast, you see the amount of cars, the machines, the technicians, everybody's flooding and everybody's busy. Now, when was your moment when you had to go in front of the camera and they had to do the countdown? Right. Because that countdown, that's what scares every journalist. Now, when was that moment for you?
The moment, because I think for all of us, because the countdown was basically done. I think Eric Chinje was doing the presenting. He was, the main anchor, but we didn't have enough news feeds to, to do a traditional newscast. So, and it had been we were reporting events of the day, because this started on the same day as the party conference. So we're basically doing our reports live on the studio set. So everybody was sitting there and the countdown was going on. My goodness, it was petrifying. It was petrifying. Yes, but I don't know. I mean, it's one of the biggest events, I guess, in my life, that I was a witness to this. Historical,
The adrenaline went. Exploded. Yes. Now, a lot did not happen after that. After the Congress, television slowed down a bit. But you said something, a lot, right? And you said something happened as an unfortunate event, but that, catapulted you from this quiet journalist to the main guy at the front line. It was the Lake Nyos disaster that happened in 1986. 86, yes. How did this whole experience impact your career, your life?
Quite a bit, I think. I mean, it's unfortunate that, you get a career boost from a very unfortunate event like that one, but that's journalism and that's the nature of the beast. But I think I was able to grow a lot in the profession. I mean, as I said, as I told you earlier in our discussions, that I mean, I had this connection. I come from the Northwest, and the Womb area was not very far from my own area in Bui Division. So, I mean, I felt that these were my people. But then I had to maintain a professional distance in order to report, you know, effectively on what was taking place. And this, especially, I found to be a liberating experience, because this was not a political event.
Yeah.
This was one event where the government, you know, pulled out all the stops. They gave us all the resources we needed. You know, they gave us access, we had access to all the authorities, from ministers down to the local government, to local authorities. I remember the first trip I went up there, the Director General of CRTV at the time, you know, we said the only way we were going to get there, because the roads were completely impassable, was to hire a plane. He said, so go ahead and hire a plane.
Wow.
Pay for it. We hired a plane. Plane took us to Bamenda. Actually, we did a flyby of the place, and I was working with Richard Lobe, cameraman, Emmanuel Tim, and the soundman, and the pilot. This was a small plane, and we flew over the disaster area and took the very first pictures that went around the world.
Your time in CRTV was kind of remarkable. You were a news presenter, and then you went on to co-host Tam Tam Weekend with Monique Ma.
Monique Ma,
yes.
Josephine Daniel.
Yes. You also conceptualized and hosted The World This Week.
The World This Week, yes.
The World This Week.
Yes.
I should first of all say that, you know, moving from the news to an entertainment program like Tam Tam Weekend is not an easy job for most journalists.
Yeah.
You know, but you could switch.
Yeah, I could switch. Initially it was, you know, out of necessity, because, as I said, there weren't that many of us, and then, Eric Chinje did Tam Tam a couple of times when it just started, because that was actually his baby. You know, so a lot of people actually decided to focus on their own areas of specialization. They didn't, you know, want to. But I kind of decided to be floating wherever I was needed. And it worked out. I mean, I enjoyed it. It wasn't like, you know, I was forced to do it. I really loved doing it. I met a lot of interesting people, a lot of the artists. I became friends with quite a few of them. And, you know, at the time it was, well, kind of different from what I hear it is now, because then we were, you know, after the artists, we went for them, we went looking for them, you know, trying to get them to come on the show.
Who were those on television at that time?
I mentioned Eric Chinje, who was, you know, the pioneer news anchor presenter. And of course there were some of those who had been there earlier in the radio, like Lukananga, television, those who came in with television, I mean, from on the Francophone side, the Charles Ndongo and Denise Epote and Alain Belivi, and then on our side there was Willie Nipa, Adamu Musa.
Time has passed, things have changed, and there is a lot of debate going on about journalism and reporting in Cameroon. What do you think about this ongoing debate that the old school was more professional, was more, you know, intelligent, you know, than what we have today as journalists?
I think it's a combination of things. It might be that the training has changed. But apart from the training in the School of Journalism itself, I think the selection of... Look, I mean, all of these, the end result that you get in a TV or radio studio begins from primary school.
Yeah.
And if it has not been, it's like planting a seed. If it's not a good seed, you know, in the end, no matter how much fertilizer you put into it, at the end, it wouldn't make a difference. So it probably might be something to do with the system of education generally. But at the same time, I find it incredible that this is the age of Google, of Wikipedia, of the spell check, of, you know, autocorrect. And I read the newspapers online from Cameroon, and it's amazing what I see, you know, as, you know, elementary errors in the headlines, for example. I mean, that's just the most ridiculous thing to see a newspaper headline with an error in it. There's spell check, it can do it for you, you don't even have to do anything. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
Laxity.
Yeah, you know, laxity, people not being willing to work hard. There's no reason for anybody to go online on the air now and make some of these elementary factual errors.
How will you compare journalism of the 80s, 90s and the journalism of today?
Yeah, there are two different worlds of journalism. I mean, I mentioned, you know, the advent of the internet, which has a lot of advantages, but a lot of downsides as well, where, you know, American politician who said a rumor can go around the world twice, while the truth is still putting on its shoes, you know, which is what the internet has made possible today. So journalism has completely changed. It's not the same thing at all between what happened in the 90s and what is happening today. But I think in Cameroon it is still kind of caught in a time warp. I think that the news business in Cameroon now is more the business than news, you know. People actually there are times that I've been in Cameroon and I realize that you actually pay for the news you get. People, not the news, I mean that there are people who are capable of paying for news to be produced to their own purpose, which I find to be really frightening. You know, so it's the journalist now that is, you know, on the spot about proving that journalism is much more than a business. That is the news.
Its creation in 1985 right up to somewhere around the 90s, it was good while it lasted. But in the 1990s then came the political turmoil in Cameroon, where people had to take sides, and it quickly found its way into the corridors of CRTV, particularly in the newsroom, where journalists at one point in time had to take sides, had to become partisan. Do you think it was, first of all, can you describe to me the work atmosphere at that time?
It was very polarized. It was really very polarized, and we, on the English-speaking desk of CRTV, were assumed, because the opposition party was born in Bamenda, and most of us came from that part of the country, it was basically just an assumption that we sympathized with the opposition. Of course, a lot of us did, and we weren't shy about it. But I think a lot of us kind of expressed our sympathy for the opposition because that assumption had been made. We had been accused of belonging to the opposition without anybody having a shred of evidence that this was the case.
Was there at any point that an Anglophone journalist said lies from CRTV instead of life from CRTV?
Well, that has always been bandied around. It's claimed that Chalindi Chair said that at some point, and I was the anchor then, and I didn't hear that. He didn't say that. But you know, he might have said that in some other program, but
not
it was
in
not on my news.
As I said, during those turbulent times in Cameroon, was it easy was it possible for a journalist to be objective? Because in your own words, you told me that when you were sent to cover the All Anglophone Conference in Boya in 1993, you covered that event as an Anglophone, and before then, you also had incidents where you didn't, I don't know what to say, but you will describe what you felt at that time during the launching of the SDF.
Right. That, I think, was really the moment when, you know, we had to display a kind of a detachment from the political and the administrative stance of our bosses. We had to show that, look, we were reporters, we're going to report the news. And for some reason, some people seem to have forgotten it, but it was clear, and I think for several years later, people talked about it. The fact that we announced on the news that night, the night it happened, that people were shot to death. You know, if the newscast is still available, which I'm hoping it is, you know, it's there to be verified. On the broadcast that night, you know, I had called the authorities.
Now, you went to jail. What were the reasons behind your arrest, and how did you get yourself off the hook?
Well, I mean, this was when, you know, you got arrested for, you know, I was actually lucky. I never got to stay in jail for a long time. Some of my colleagues, you know, stayed in jail, and some of them were damaged for a long time. I remember when Sam Fong came, Johnny McViban, Epstein Goom, Temfak Ofege, who else? Yeah, they were locked up for more than 4 or 5 months. I was lucky. I got missed on that one. But I mean, I think the last one I remember was when I went to cover an event in Frundi's house in Essos. I was with Jean-Baptiste Sipa and a couple of other Francophone reporters from the private press, and we got picked up and we were accused of being part of the SDF. And ironically, I mean, I never was, you know, a member of the SDF or that kind of thing. I mean, I actually a few times was told that Mr. Frundi was upset with me for some criticism I had made of the SDF, which I did very regularly.
But your wife, Dr. Beatrice WARMEY, she was very politically engaged.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
So,
she was.
How was the WARMEY household at that time?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, it was very interesting. I mean, you know, she was engaged on a couple of fronts. She was active in the SDF, but she was very much more engaged in the Teachers Association of Cameroon, TAC, when they were fighting for the GC, autonomy of the GC. And this, I thought, was the more interesting part. The political one, well, you know, was her being her.
Yeah. Now, after incidents in 1993, I think precisely after the AAC, you were taken off the air.
Yeah, I was taken off the air. I survived in TV for quite a while because, you know, people said I had this style of, you know, doing things in a very insidious manner. I remember Mr. Conchu at one time saying I have a cynical smile. You know, I undermine what I'm saying with the way I smile about it. I'm like, okay, even my smile. But, you know, at a certain point, I guess Mr. Mendoza just thought he would cut his losses and, you know, ease me out. Somehow just decided one day to say, no, this person will present the news. And I think that was Jesse Atogo. You know, that was it. I just showed up at work and sat there and did nothing for a few months. And I decided to leave the place.
So were you fired? Did you retire, or you just quit?
I just walked away from it. I just walked away. I mean, it really was not worth it anymore. I just sitting there and doing nothing. United States.
Yes. Now, living for the United States, that is in 1994. You landed a job at the World Bank. And good news. Wow. But how did that come about? How did you get that job?
Well, I didn't get here and get a job at the World Bank immediately. I got here and, had to do some, Thing is, when I got here, what gave me confidence in this country is when I got here, some people who knew me in Cameroon heard that I was here and said, look, we have this newspaper, the Western Times, they have this African section where there's nothing about Cameroon at all. And we've called the editor and they said, well, the guy you're talking about, if he can write, we'll publish it. So I think about 3 weeks after I got here, I wrote a column for the Washington Times. They published it in the Africa section. They looked at it, they liked it, they called me in. They said, can you do this like every month or two? And I said, well, this is amazing. I just came from Africa. I don't have, any experience here, and I can have a prominent newspaper open, publish my articles. So that gave me a lot of confidence. But, I had to go through what everybody who arrives here, so, a new immigrant has to do, do menial jobs, especially as my wife and kids followed the next year. So, but, my wife prodded me, you're not just going to stay here and do, media jobs and stuff like that. So you need to go back to school. So at one point, all of us, my wife and our 2 sons then, were all in university at the same time. We're all in, so I had to go back to do a master's degree. She was doing her PhD, my kids were in Polytechnic. So, so I did my master's. I completed in '98, and the next year I got a job at the World Bank.
Do you have any regrets?
About leaving CRTV and stuff? Not really, no. Not really. For me, I don't spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. I'm very much of, through the windscreen person, not.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful to have you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we come to the end of today's edition of the program. I can wait to see you next time. Until then, it's bye from here.